So today's class is going to be about patterns. When we start to explore Rolf movement, the thing that we usually start on first is finding out what the pattern is that you have evolved over your lifetime. And patterns have to do with the way you move, the way your facial expression is, right down to how you wiggle your toes, how you walk, stand, breathe, bend, relate to physical objects in your environment, relate to other people, and also has to do with how you relate to yourself. Because as the pattern develops over your lifetime, it shapes your self-perception quite strongly. Mm-hmm. So how do patterns evolve? They begin at conception. One of our strongest influences is gravity. And so right away we're beginning to be shaped by how our mother moves with us in her womb, how she sits and lies, and how she manages in the world and goes in. And then we get born, and we're shaped by the circumstances of our birth. And then even as an infant, we start being shaped by how we're put down, how we're carried, where we're put down in relationship to light and bright objects, how we're laid down to sleep. And then we get on our feet, and we go out and start to develop. And one of our early impulses is to belong. So to belong. Yeah. So we start to imitate our parents. To walk like dad, tilt your head like mom, and do this like big sister. And then as we move on out of the family circle, we get into other social situations where we want to be part of the group. And so we start to move the way people in the group move. So if you're growing up in the mountains and the heroes of the town, I lived in Gold Hill for a while, so our mountain men, well, they stand like this, so a little boy will get his stance, or little girl studies ballet, and all her friends are ballerinas, and so she walks with her feet out and her chest up and her head up, and so on. You're shaped by your culture. And then we're also shaped by our activities. So the job that you do, supposing you're in construction and you carry a lot of heavy things around, maybe you tend to put them more on the right shoulder than the left, and that shapes you. Or maybe you're sitting in front of a computer all day. That shapes you. Mm-hmm. And then you're into, like you guys are, into lots of other kinds of activities like sports and dance and parkour. And all of those things shape you. We have a saying among Rolfers that that one has martial arts legs, because somebody who's really into martial arts have a certain structure in the legs that evolves. Wow. So all of those things are shaping us, and one of the strongest shapers is trauma. And trauma can be injury. So a little boy could fall down the stairs and get up and dust himself off and say, "I'm okay, Mom," but his pelvis is just a little bit off. And then he compensates for that, and by the time he's grown up, he may have quite a few compensations around that original fall. And then there are many other injuries more severe than falling downstairs, like automobile accidents and getting kicked by horses, and who knows. And we're also shaped by the trauma of illness. Somebody who's had a lot of pneumonia may never quite learn to breathe properly again. And we're shaped by abuse, and all of us have experienced some abuse, some more than others. But when I was growing up, I had an older brother who did this rabbit punch thing on my arm every time he passed me for years. That shaped me, And people can be in a situation. Cedar's an expert on power relationships here. So somebody with power over you can be dominating and put you down and say you're bad and all of this, and that can shape you either into defiance or cringing. And then there's the trauma of more severe traumas like rape, getting beaten up, and then there's war. And anyone that's been around war has certainly been deeply shaped by that. So we all have our unique story made up of all the different influences and our responses to them. Now, some of our patterns are good. They're fine. We keep them. Some of our patterns cause us pain. So maybe you're moving in a particular way repeatedly that impacts a certain part of your body, or perhaps you have a pattern that worked very well for you at some point, but is no longer appropriate. I'm just thinking of, 2-year-old boy sticking his little diapered butt out and lifting his chest and his head and saying, "No!" No, that's an important moment for him, really important. But then when he's 30 and he's still walking around like that, he's probably got back pain, and he may also have a very off-putting charisma that isolates him. So many times patterns that were appropriate at a certain time lose their appropriateness. But I'm just thinking also, I had a client recently that grew up in kind of a tough environment and had a neck like this. Okay, so if you're going to be hit all the time, you better keep your neck stiff, because you don't want to. But he had been decades in an environment where no one was hitting him anymore, so he didn't need to keep his neck so tight. So some of our patterns, as I say, are no longer appropriate. And then what happens with patterns, they layer. So there's this and this and this and this and this, and pretty soon we end up with a whole lot of layers of stress that keep us from moving comfortably or freely. And part of what we're looking at in Rolf movement is how can we start clearing some of that away so that you can live easier. And some patterns are deceptive. Like, here's a guy that makes a big frown between his brows, and he's just used to doing that. But it makes him look like he's angry, and he isn't. So he's creating a perception out there to other people of something that isn't truly happening inside of us. And a lot of that goes on. People are projecting something that isn't really what they want to project, but they're unconscious about it, so they don't know what they're doing. And then, since we've all had trauma, a lot of our patterns are fear-based, as protective or defensive. So all of that. That's a brief summary. So what we're looking at in Rolf movement is seeing, I've been doing this for over 40 years now, and the most fun is to see, as some of these layers come off, to see an authentic person emerge. And that's what we're up to. With both the structural work and the movement work. But the movement work gets to the patterns in a way that the structural work may change the structure, but if the person doesn't understand, they can go back to the same pattern that they were in before. So when we get all of these pieces together, we have our presentation. I'm going out in the world. I'm going to meet the faces that I meet. I'm going to fit in. I'm going to get ahead, whatever. And for the purposes of this class, I'd like to call that our act. Okay. You heard this phrase, or get your act together? Okay. So what I'd like to do today is explore with you what your act is. And then understand it. And as I say, in Rolf movement, it's not about right or wrong, it's about options. When we're unconscious, we don't have options. We're stuck with what we're doing because we don't know anything else. And there are times when, I used to be like this. I was one of these defended ones. And there are times when I want that. I want that right now. So you can call it back, you have it. But you can also have the option of letting it go when you don't need it. So start walking, and I want to talk to you while you walk and guide your awareness. So just walking up and down the room as if you were going downtown. As much as being as comfortable as under the circumstances. I know. Okay. So I'm going to ask you questions for you to guide your awareness, and try not to always walk in a clump, just pass each other. Use the space. Tune in to your feet. And I'm going to be asking you a couple of kinds of questions. One of them have to do with the feeling of it, and others are more analytic. So analytically, just notice what happens when you bend your toes behind you. Or do you bend your toes behind you? Some people don't. Walk as normally as possible, Cedar, so that you don't slow yourself down to think about it. And does your feet turn in or out? That's something to notice. And then see how your feet feel to you. This is more of a feeling question. Does one foot feel more secure than the other? Do your feet feel secure? Do you feel like you can make good contact with the ground? Okay. I encourage you not to slow down too much because that changes it. All right, so now, sense of feet. Now tune into your knees. Imagine that you're in a dark room and you have light bulbs on your kneecaps. What kind of track would your light make in the dark space? Would it go out and in? Would it go up and down? Would it go forward, back? So just see how your knees track. Sometimes they go out before they swing around, especially on the swing through. What's happening with your knees? And then another thing to notice about knees is if they lock at any point in your cycle of steps. You know what I mean by lock? You got that? Yeah. So sometimes they can lock as you kick off, sometimes they can lock on the swing through, sometimes they can lock when you put your weight down. Just notice if that happens. And sometimes one knee will lock and the other won't. Your sides are not going to be identical unless you're very unusual. Okay. Got a sense of knees now? So now we're going to move up to pelvis. So pelvis includes the top of your hip bones to your sit bones to the top of your legs. And so again, one side of your pelvis may move differently than the other. Does your pelvis wrap around you when you step forward? Does it jog off to the side? Does one side jog off to the side and the other one wrap around? Do they swing forward, back? Would you mind tucking in your shirt, Jake, so I can see? Yeah, okay. And what's your awareness of your pelvis? Can you feel it? Can you feel the low back? Can you feel your low belly? Or are there any blank places? So wherever you have a spot that you don't notice very easily, that's an important thing to pay attention to. Okay, and now pay attention to your midsection right here. And on all of this, I'm going to touch you, Cedar, here. Think about front to back. So the midsection, this is the back of the front and this is the front of the back. Okay. So how does your midsection move? Or does it move? Some people's midsections don't move. Walk and see what's happening with your midsection. See if you can feel it without your hands, Mary, though. That's also a good way to, yeah. And now move your awareness up to your upper thorax, your chest. Again, think front and back. Does this move when you walk? And if it does, how does it move? Is this a place that you have awareness, or is this a place that eludes your awareness? And now, notice the movement of your arms. Again, do they move? If they stay pretty quiet when you're walking, that's something to notice. Does one move more than the other? Do they move from the elbow or the shoulder? And now, how are you doing? Am I going too fast? Are you following? Okay. So pay attention to the angle of your jaw as you walk. Try and don't try and change it to be good. This is about finding out, finding out who you are. Yeah. And so is it tilted up? Does it tilt more to one side than the other? Does it tilt it down? And where do your eyes rest? And then notice if your head moves with your walking or if it stays fairly quiet. Okay. And now for a moment, just keep walking and come back to anything that particularly caught your attention and notice that. How are you doing?
Good. A lot of information.
Pardon?
A lot of information.
A lot of information. Well, let's sit down for a minute again. So what did you notice? I don't need the entire thing, but just what was most important or what surprised you or something perhaps that you knew about, but there you really felt it again. I want to get what was the biggest hit from what you just did. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, we've done in the training some of the walking, and it's a
right.
similar thing as I've noticed before of just stability through my ankles, and like taking a step and sometimes feeling like I'm just falling off to the side one way or the other.
So the weight would fall a little on the outside of your feet.
Sometimes good, and then sometimes there's a step that's sort of like ooh, and just real subtle, from side to side.
Is there anything else that struck you today as you were walking?
Movement through my arms and shoulder girdle. I think one side seemed to move, have more mobility than the other. Another one was maybe more.
So your right side
held
was moving freer than your left? Okay. What about you, Levi? What did you find out?
I noticed a little bit of a challenge in moving this direction with my body. I can open up this way, but my core doesn't seem to want to go that way very well. And along with that, like my left knee has this interesting buckle to the outside when I walk. It doesn't hurt, but when you brought it up, it was like, oh yeah, headlights.
It swings around?
Yeah, it swings around. I noticed this one was felt straighter, and this one had this. I'd never noticed that before.
Okay.
So that was interesting.
Yeah. What did you notice, Cedar?
I noticed two things. One was that it seemed like there was a contrast between how much from here down moves and more stillness, almost heldness from here up.
Right.
And I also noticed that my left side seemed a little more held back than my right.
So the right leg swung through freer.
And the arm went a little further on the right. And just this.
So your left side held back.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Mary?
When you called our attention to the abdominal region, I just noticed my awareness, like I didn't have any sensation there, and this is kind of a guarded area for me. I've had abdominal surgery, and I've had like chronic digestive stuff for a long time, so
you just got that
that's
shielded.
Yeah, it's all playing in there. And then with the placement of the jaw, I think my head tends to go back and my jaw up. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh. automatic correction.
Right, right. So you've had a lot of dance background. And do you think
Well-
that shaped you there and bringing your head up?
That's a possibility.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I try and emulate this lifted stature.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is kind of wild. I'm going to invite you to be playful.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is take your pattern, so your wobbly feet and your one side that doesn't move as much as the other, and exaggerate it. Okay, so you're going to make a caricature of your pattern. We're going to call this your act. So we're making a caricature of it so that it will be more obvious.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you some questions. So I'm going to ask you to move freely around the room, as we'll get some space from the, just exaggerating your pattern. So I found when I was walking that I have a little wibble wobble in my feet. You know, a little bit of wibble wobble. So where did that go? Oh, the wibble wobble went all over the place. And then you can see. Okay. So what I'm going to do is ask you to exaggerate. So you exaggerate your wobbly feet and that shoulder that holds back, and your knee, and really go out to one side and don't let the other one do. Really play with it, and you'll be even more still up above that. See what that does. Yeah, and your left side held, and you're going to work with. Is this? Yeah. Okay. Just keeping this really quiet. Yeah. Okay. So this can be very fun and very enlightening, because we're going to take and make it bigger. So just take the space. You don't have to walk, though walking may be a way to get started, and then just see what comes. And I'm going to ask you some questions as you get going, okay?
And we're all doing this at once.
We're all doing it at once, yeah. So go. So now I'm going to ask you to name your act. Give it a name. I've had all kinds of wonderful names over the years teaching this class. One of them was Forever Miss America, and somebody else was Matzo balls for knees. It can be a one word or it can be a phrase, but get into it and see who this is. Who is this? And choose a name. Yeah. And be playful.
Creature from the swamp.
Yeah.
Be playful. And go ahead and really, really get into it. Now, once you got a sense of who this character is, who this act is, next question is, how does this serve you? Because all of these patterns that we talked about, we didn't just get them for nothing. We had a reason. You know, like the little boy that stuck his butt back and yelled no, and maybe the guy who had the frown between his brows, he had a reason for that at one point. So how does this serve you? What do you get out of this act? Got an answer to that one?
Tired.
Getting tired, suboccipital.
So this is how it serves you. Now the next question is, how does it limit you? Some of those patterns that I described earlier talked about how they limited the person that was living with them. And you're still doing it and thinking about these questions. And the next question is, this will be probably pretty easy at this point. You may be getting uncomfortable. How does this feel in your body? Does it hurt? Is it stiff somewhere? Or does it feel good? How does it feel in your body?
Well, not good. Except for the freedom of being playful with it.
And now, one more question, and this may change your movement quite a bit. What fear underlies this act? And how does that fear move? So you may be changing your movement quite a bit as you go into how does that fear move?
Is this the fear that we're guarding against with our act?
Mm-hmm. The fear that underlies the act. Yeah,
So would it be like a small self?
it could be. It could be very small. It could run and hide in a corner, or it could run around and punch the air. It could be whatever. What do you do with your fear? How does your fear move? The one that, name the fear that underlies the act also. What is it?
Would you like us to say that out loud?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Just feel it inside for now. Okay, so take a break for a moment and shake out because you put a lot of tension in your bodies. Just let it shake out and So, come sit. What I'd like to invite you to do now is to share this. And we'll have a little theater in the round, so to speak. Maybe not quite in the round, so we can fit around these cameras. And I'll go first. Okay. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we spread out a little, so the person in the middle has lots of room. So I was playing with this the other day because I was, okay, so the wibble wobble on the feet, but then there's something over that that is like this. Overriding that wibble wobble even though it's still there. And my name is Ms. Go Go Go. And how this does is I'm going very fast all the time. I'm overriding any problems that I might have that might slow me down, and I'm getting lots of things done. Okay. So this serves me because I do get lots of things done. I get lots of things done, and also I'm very impressive. People get very impressed by how much I get done. So that serves me. But how it limits me, so I get really tired. And also, since I'm so busy getting things done, I don't stop and savor life. Especially now that I'm getting old, I should be savoring it more because there's not that much left. And this Go 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 is pretty busy. And how it feels in my body, I'm tired. Also, a lot of tension here and here. And okay. And the fear under that is, if I don't do all that, everything's going to fall apart. And I'm not going to be okay. All right, that's mine. So, who would like to go next? There's plenty of time. Wanna do it, Mary?
I can speak to mine. I don't know if I've unwound the story that much, but so noticing my head lifted.
So let's see you moving.
Yeah, okay.
And give us your name.
Miss Snooty Belly?
What was the word?
Snooty Belly? Because I found this quiet and this is my, I'm not sure. I think this might be dealing with a story that I have of being shy, introverted, not making friends easily, that I'm unwinding in recent, like this year. But something about this, I have the desire to be like lifted, and I want people to think that I have good posture, and that I guess that I've got my act together in that way.
Yeah.
And
so
then
how does it, so this is how it serves you?
I think so.
Say a little more about her. You should really get into her now and
Okay.
tell us what's good about her act.
Oh, I think there's confidence in the lifted posture. There's some kind of pride and self-worth and ego playing into it.
Yeah.
And when I see other people in the slumped kind of way, my reaction is to like draw this up and like, oh no, I've got my stuff together. I'm okay. And then I think there's a little tension here too.
Yeah.
Like I find myself tightening. And that's probably like, well, I want to be thinner also. But this is the guarded area from surgery and like medical and digestive stuff.
So how does this Miss Snooty Belly
Snooty.
Snooty Belly. Oh, I didn't get the word. Thank you. I'm glad I got it now.
Thank you.
So how does that limit you?
Well, in the exaggerated walking, this just got very tiring, and I'm missing out on like the bottom half of the room.
Okay.
Yeah. It just feels tiring and it feels fake.
Feels fake. Yeah. So what about the fear underneath that? Can you show us how that fear moved? Really different, huh? And can you name the fear? What is the fear about?
I think the fear is being unnoticed, unimportant, and like disconnected.
So you got to override that. Make sure people notice you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All of this is what we're going to be working on in our private sessions. Yeah. Okay, who's next?
Next. Did you want me to walk my pattern?
Well, let's see it. Give us the full.
Oh man, it's like this. It's like a knee and just.
And who is this character? What's his name?
Ah man, this would be Mr. Fear of Being Hurt. So, yeah.
And so, how does this pattern serve you?
It helps me move around any pain. So if you're so grounded and solid, you can work through anything.
Let's see, moving that a little bit more.
So if there's a pain somewhere else, you can just adapt and move around and pretend it's not there. And just be so solid through here, and just you find like the only opening you can get for movement, and so you just go through that, and then you forget about the rest. So anything else just kind of goes away, falls to the wayside, or gets buried.
Yeah, the way that you're moving your arm, things could fall off, couldn't they?
Yeah. It's like it's almost seems relaxed, but it's really not. It takes a lot of energy concentrated through here to keep it all together.
So how does this limit you?
I mean, if you just tighten things up so much, eventually, you eventually get so constricted you can't move. You become bound by your resoluteness. You're kind of, I'm okay, to a point where, you forget where you're not okay.
Yeah.
So you lose awareness through everywhere. So I would say I'm not that aware in here because it's just so forgotten.
And is there a fear behind this?
I think the fear of being hurt is, some of the injuries I've suffered emotionally, physically, you just kind of bury everything and, forget about it so that you don't have to deal with it.
how does the fear move? Does it move the same way, or does it have a...
The
does it
fear,
have
if
a-
I had to embody it the best way, would be like I can move comfortably like this, semi-comfortably. You know, this feels like home in some ways.
Yeah.
So moving out of this feels more challenging, but it's kind of what I would like, is this to be the default versus this one.
So that's the fear posture.
Yeah, this one right here, just kind of
Yeah.
like looking at the ground,
Mm-hmm.
everything protected.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah?
Go for it. So, let's see. My movement was,
So give us your full act.
yeah, let's see, full act, kind of down, kind of head down, kind of like this.
Does this guy have a name?
I was thinking of Frankenstein's monster as as I was moving, because that's what came to mind, because this side just felt so like just tight and kind of hardened off, or just I didn't feel so much movement through this side of my body.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
this arm was swinging, but this end where there's been a lot of pain and kind of chronic pain and injury, just is sort of like, you know. And
So that made you into a Frankenstein monster?
yeah, not a positive thing to say, but I just thought sort of like the like real stiff movement. That's what this
okay.
side felt like.
And so
So-
how does that pattern serve you? This is a very, you all understand, this is a very important question.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to let go of something that's serving you unless you have another option.
Yeah.
So let's hear what this does for you.
I've given it thought over the last couple of months, and I think just like when you're in pain and when you've had injury, you just harden to it, and when you you just sort of like clench through it because you can't, you know, you do what you can to change it, but if that's still there, it just seems like if you harden off to that, and it's probably with emotional things too, or you know, tough things that happen where that works for a while, but
So
there comes a
hardening
point
it
where
off just helps you handle it.
it helps you just move through the day and not right get through physical pain.
So how does this hardening off limit you?
It's in the same, it's a similar thing, you know, the head down, and I think it's limiting because you're not open, you're not to what's going around, and that could be physically, things are closed in, and so it's limiting, I think, just with how I interact with people, or how in the moment, or you know, when difficult things happen or tough things happen in life, I don't process them well in the moment, and that hardening, that like holds it together for a time, but then there comes that point where it's like, that's still there, like where are you going with it, how are you going to deal with that, and so it's a temporary fix that isn't really a fix, I think. Long term causes more damage.
Because it only works temporarily.
Yeah, and probably causes more harm than good, you know.
Is there a fear?
That's what I've noticed.
A fear behind this pattern?
I would say probably the feeling of being like helpless, or things being outside of being able to control those. Thinking back this year of just some tough things that have happened, to me, through what's happened to people I love, and it's that feeling of not being able to feel like I have much influence in their situation, and hence my emotions along with it, and so it's I'd say that's the fears that came to mind were sort of probably one having to do with acceptance from other people and how I've held myself maybe, and then also a fear of just things just feeling kind of outside of my control to some extent. Things that are happening to loved ones or physically happening to me. So.
And the name that spontaneously came was Creature from the Swamp. And the image was that the bottom half of me was like a rapidly moving crocodile.
Uh-huh.
And the top of me was the crocodile above the water, very still. And looking around, very still. And underneath the water was just working like mad. So, trying to see how that makes sense with my life experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes the word swamp, I constantly have a feeling of being swamped.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And expectations that are way beyond what I could do. And too much.
So does this pattern serve you in some way?
Well, it can make me look very calm and collected when underneath I'm swamped. I'm just running to catch up and not sure I will be able to catch up. So just like, it's too much. The expectations of what I'm supposed to do be from who knows where, or even from myself, are just too much. And there's also this yes, no. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That-
About the response to all the expectations?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll
Yeah.
do it, no, I won't?
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay. And then, how does this limit you?
Oh, let me count the ways. Feels like constantly being in a swamp, being swamped with so much stuff that I can't stop and pay attention to the things that would be nourishing and beautiful and soft. And
So the holding the stillness is what stops you from paying attention.
well, that
And having-
combined at the same time with this running around.
Right.
It's like it's very hard for a body to do both those things at the same time.
And that's how it feels in your body, very hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do it. But yes, I can. Sure, I can. No.
Is there a fear behind all of this?
I think it's this almost global fear that I won't be able to meet the expectations for myself, of myself, and that I must have experienced somewhere outside growing up.
Yeah.
The you must change the world idea.
So, thank you for sharing this, and this is our beginning.
Yeah.
And I'll be working with each of you on these patterns, which is, and the consciousness, does it feel like this helped you become a little more aware?
Oh my goodness,
Definitely.
yes.
Yeah. So as the more that we have consciousness, then the more we have choice. And that's really what we're about with Rolf Movement. And then the other thing is to, I don't know, my former husband, Tom Wing, he's also a Rolfer, and he had a beautiful thing to say, which has inspired me for years, which he says, when I'm Rolfing, I want to try and see the essential body of that person and then help them to manifest it. And in Rolf Movement, I would say the essential expression of that person and help them to manifest it. So that's our path. It's a infinite one. Okay, but we'll be walking along it. Does anyone want to say anything or ask anything?
Just gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Timely. It feels like right in line with other things that have been happening and other
yeah.
thoughts have been happening. So
Right.
I feel grateful. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just join hands again. Find center. So all these things we've been doing have been throwing us all the ways we're off center. So just try and find the front of your spine. Feel your sit bones on the floor. And then feel the breath come up the front of your spine from your tailbone, up through your center, through your neck, through your face, out the top of your head, and then turn around and come back down. Right back down the front of the spine. Ground yourself through your tailbone. Feel your center. Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.